What's shaking, cats and kittens? I'm Rob Lee from Getting to the Truth in This Art. And this podcast is brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Bazaar. Bazaar is a gift shop for those seeking the strange and unusual. Got morbid curiosity? Got an interest in natural history? Bazaar's got you covered. Bazaar specializes in antique medical equipment, jewelry, prints, funerary antiques, and many other morbid gifts. The inventory is ever-changing. I'm wearing a great death's head moth pin, and I'm enjoying this hand-poured candle called Overgrown Cemetery. It's great. It has the studio smelling awesome. Head on over to 3534 Chestnut Avenue in Baltimore, it's in that Hamden neighborhood, and see what they got to offer at Bazaar. Tell them Rob Lee sent you. Welcome to Getting to the Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee, and today's guest is tattooer and artist. We have Tyler Brewer. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me on today.
Finally, we have someone whose voice is like deeper than mine, and yeah, here we are. Here we are.
Oh, you romantic fool, you! I wouldn't say all that.
So I was going to throw in there, Crab Daddy, but I was just asking what you told me before.
I'll die before we can get to our second question.
So I gave that really brief and like super brief and like 30,000 foot view of what you do and what you're about. But obviously in looking at your work and the previous conversations that we've had, your work is deeper than that. So for those who are uninitiated, describe what your work is about, what your tattooing is about, and spin it.
All right. Well, I mean, like you had said, I'm a tattooer, of course. To me, lately, tattooing has changed. This is my 16th year doing what I do. And I got to say, man, you know, it's a little humbling. I have to humble myself to say it now, but I didn't start out on a good foot. When I started tattooing, I started with little direction. I'd like to say that I did it the right way. I took an apprenticeship. I got under tattooers and paid a lot of attention. I got tattooed. You know, I did the things that one should do in learning this, but I don't feel that my head was in the right place. I kind of started backwards. You know, I was young. I was excited. I wanted to get right in there, and I skipped a lot of stuff. You know, I started out, you know, wanting to just get that instant gratification of the tattoos. And I jumped on some bandwagons that were hot at the time. And in tattooing, there's a lot of trends, you know, that'll come and go. Mm-hmm. And at the time, there was a style of tattooing that was popular. I mean, a lot of people will call it like new school. And I was on the last end of that wave, you know, that I got interested in that. But, you know, I got interested in a style of art that doesn't really follow all the traditional basic rules of tattooing. Yeah. And in that, being young in my tattooing, I skipped a lot of the foundational basic stuff that's super important, unfortunately, for myself. So it took me a lot of years, you know, to realize that and admit that to myself. And I encountered a couple of cats that kind of, if you're familiar with the saying, led by example in a way that kind of showed me that I wasn't cool. You know, I wasn't doing things the way that I was supposed to be doing them. And I can name a few names, and it'd probably take me a while to name them all. But man, a local guy here, Chris Smith. I encountered Chris Smith, the tattooer. He's a Baltimore legend around here. And I was young, man. This was many years ago. I encountered him in Wheaton, Maryland, tattooing around him for a short time. And it was just something about the way that guy was doing things, you know, his work, the way he was selling his work, the way the clients would receive him. And man, I saw this and I was like, man, I ain't got it. You know, I'm not doing this right. And then I'm not going to just harp on this one man's name, you know, but that's just one I can say that's local. You know, we're doing a Baltimore podcast.
Sure.
This is, you know, a local Baltimore guy that everybody knows. And, you know, after feeling that way and saying like, man, I don't think I got it figured out like I thought I did, you know, I started kind of looking back at what I skipped, you know, all of this, you know, basic foundational stuff, you know, and I started realizing, you know, I heard in my head, there was this old man that told me when I was learning a tattoo, keep it simple, stupid. And just one day I heard that shit pop up in my head, you know, keep it simple, stupid. And I was trying to do all these bells and whistles and go all in left field with my work for years. Yeah. And it was kind of kicking me, you know, coming back to bite me. It wasn't giving me my desired results in my work. So lately, over the years, you know, guys like that I've described and influences like that have kind of told me, and hearing that in my head, keep it simple, stupid. Like, go back to the basics. And that's kind of what I've been focusing on attempting to do with myself over the last several years of my work. is try and throw all that fucking extra bells and whistles stuff out the window, and look and observe what the older people before me did and how they did it. And, there's a reason that they did it the way that they did it. And, cut all the bullshit out and just be, keep it simple. Make things readable, make things, make things in a way to where when they're 20 years old as well, this is something that wasn't important to me when I was young, but is now, something I'm trying to keep in my mind. I want to design my work so when I see it down the road, say I don't see you for 5 more years, I want that tat to look the same way, as it did, within reason 5 years ago when I did it,
Yeah.
So a lot of my approach now is, I think I'm at a point in my career where it's time for me to just kind of shut up, if you will, and be humble and look at how it's been done and try and focus on why it's been done that way for as long as it's been done. I think that's going to be the place I need to be for quite some time from here out, as an artist.
Yeah, I understood on that. And I think it's good to come to that moment where that realization, rather, where you're like, all right, let me really take a step back and see what people have done and why they've done it that way, because that ego will fuck you up. It'll be in your spot. And you're like, yeah, you're seeing your own results. You're seeing all of these different things. You're like, yeah, I'm great. I'm fantastic. And then people who are doing it and they're around, they know better. They're just like, yeah, just wait till you hit that speed bump. And it's the reason I think just that notion, it's a tried and true thing. The whole KISS example, right? Keep it simple, stupid. Yeah. It's tried and true in that it's what got you into it. Those simpler things that before you put your own seasoning and spin on it, that's the thing that got you into it. So that's the thing that you're always going to go back to.
Why I say you're exactly right on that statement you just made is I think back to the first tattoos, my memory, can pull up that I saw. And they were these to the point and basic, traditional designs that when I saw them as a child, they were 20 years old on grandpa or, when I say grandpa, my grandfather didn't have any tattoos. You would see them on the older guys, and they were aged and they were haggard, but you could still tell that was a fucking mermaid.
Yeah,
you could still tell, that's a ship, that, and it looks good. I mean, it looks fucking kind of cooler when it's 20 years old in that style. Yeah. But I mean, that's it. There's a reason why motherfuckers do things. A classic is a classic for a reason. You do things in a certain approach for a reason, because like I said, this guy, my first memory of a tattoo, I still could tell what it was. And it was older than most tattoos, I've ever done. I've never even done a tattoo yet that's that old. Yeah. In my career. I think that's why you're correct. When you keep it simple and to the basic and, do what you need to do to get the job done and making your designs and things, then things stand the test of time.
There are 2 tattoos that come to mind for me. One is pop culture related and one is personal. The personal one would be my dad. He has a flag tattoo on his arm or what have you. And he recently did that thing that this other tattoo I'm going to reference did, the other person did. You have that original tattoo. It's relatively simple. It's no color in it and all of that stuff. And it looks like it's like a stick poke. It's super old. It had to be done in the 70s or something. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then like years later, he got like a bulldog because he's a Marine or what have you. He gets the bulldog tattoo and it's in full color, the whole thing. And I'm like, I like the other one better. And the other, like the newer one is more vibrant and so on. But that other one had more, I guess, relevance and more. I remember that growing up. It was
impact on you.
Right. So
as the viewer, that tattoo impacted you more.
Right. And both of them are kind of in the same vein of what they're representing. And the other one that comes to mind is a former idol of mine, The Rock. He had that original Brahma Bull. And then when he did the update and it's just like this big, high shaded, all of this stuff, it's like the other one was better. Like this one is a lot more work and I appreciate all the hours that it took or whatever. The other one was better. It popped better. Yeah. So for you, let's speak on like your first tattoo. So the first tattoo that you did, what comes to mind on that one? And what was it and what's memorable about it, if anything?
So the question, so I'm making sure we're on the same page, is the first one I performed on someone else or the first one I got?
We can do both.
Okay. Well, the first one I got is a funny story. When I was 13, most of the time as a tattooer, when you see minors getting tattooed, they have to have parental consent. So what's going on is usually it's a design that they've come up with that mom and dad will agree to. Mm-hmm. It's not even necessarily realistically what you want. It's what you can squeeze by with, that they'll let you get when you're young like that. So my mentality was there. And unfortunately, we had a death in our family. My grandfather had passed away, and his nickname was Pops. Everyone referred to him as Pops. So on the way home from his funeral for my own first tattoo, this is how I got it. And on the way home from his funeral, we lived in a really small town. And on the way home, I just piped up from the backseat of the car, like, hey, guys, like, why don't y'all let me get Pop's name tattooed? And they were like, their first question, Nick, they say, you got the money? I'm 13, you got the money? And I'm like, yeah, I got the money.
Parents.
I got the money, and they're like, well, we'll stop. Well, we were close to the shop. We'll stop and we'll sign the papers and shit, but we're leaving. Like, we got shit we're going to go do. You got to find your own way home. So it's a small town. That's not a big deal, I can walk home. So they come in, they sign the paper. I'm fucking 13 years old, and I pay the man, and he fucking tattoos my back, and I walk home.
Oh, wow.
With the word Pops, P-O-P-S, in between my shoulder blades, about 3.5, 4 inches in width there. And then I walked home. Now, the first tattoo I did is kind of another short, funny story. Yeah. I've got a cousin, and there's 2 answers if you ask me who taught me how to tattoo. First off, I'd say my cousin Kevin. We spent some time together in our late teens, early 20s. And he, in the beginning of our time together, bought a janky tattoo kit off of the internet. Now, Kevin, mind you, spent about 8 years in federal penitentiary. Now, that's where he learned to tattoo. So when he got out, he was like, I'm going to keep tattooing. And we started hanging out. I'm going to keep tattooing. I learned how to tattoo in jail. So we ordered, quote unquote, professional tattoo equipment. He didn't get good stuff, He didn't know any better. He'd been tattooing with homemade tape deck, motor machines and stuff in jail. Wow. So he orders what he thinks is good machines and, some good pigments, and none of it was any good. And he starts tattooing myself and my friends. I'm still wearing some of these tattoos he did on me, back then when we were children. But he lost interest after a while to keep this short. He did like a couple of months where he was like the hood superstar tattooing everybody, and then he's like, whatever. And it just sits in a box in the corner of his room for a good month and a half. Yeah. So one day I'm at his house and I just pick it up and take it home with me. I stole his gear for a while. And I started tattooing, and he comes to my house one day and I'm tattooing. And he's like, you little bastard, did you steal my tattoo gear? And I'm like, yeah, help. I'm having a hard time here, So he starts kind of like helping me out. Yeah. And, from there, we were really close. This sounds silly. He wasn't mad at me or anything. But, in a nutshell, I just picked this stuff up, took it home. And once he realized I had it, he started talking tattoo with me a little, So that got me started. The day I brought that stuff home. Yeah. My friend, from high school, we all called him Pinky. So we shortened it. We just call him Pink. His name's Devin Sukup, a little silly guy, from my childhood. And he wanted the Crimson Ghost. I think that might have been why I went and took the gear, because he said, if you get the machines, I'll let you do it. So I went to my cousin's house. I go get the machines. And the Crimson Ghost, the punk band, the Misfits, it's their logo with the skull, the negative space. Everyone's seen it. Super popular, image in pop culture. But I tattooed this on this guy, but being a tattooer now and looking back on it, this was super brutal. And I would never do this now because I didn't know what I was doing. Oh. And the only needles that we had were single needles and 3-liners. And this design is a heavy, solid black image. Mm-hmm. I didn't do it very large, but when I did it, all of that solid black, I did it with a single needle or a 3-liner, which, to not know what I'm saying, that's very bad. Like, I created hamburger meat on this man.
Oh no.
And I had no idea what I was doing. I was so happy to be there. I was enthusiastic as they come. But man, it was a disaster, and I created such a wound. And he still has the tattoo to this day. He won't get it covered up. We've stayed friends from, he still lives in our hometown, but he won't cover the tattoo up. And every time I see it, when he sends me pictures of it, I put my head in my hands and like shake my head at how ignorant I was at the time, But that was my first tattoo. My friend was like, I'll let you do the Crimson Ghost on me if you go grab the machines from Kevin's house. So I went and kind of slinked out of the house and snuck the machines and brought them to my house. And then I, annihilated this Crimson Ghost tattoo. Bless his soul for letting me do that,
Yeah. So we'll have a couple of questions related to Baltimore.
Okay.
Let's speak on some influences though. Who or what influences your tattooing these days?
The guys next to me these days.
Yeah.
The guys next to me, and we live in the age of information now. When I started tattooing, we still were, it was the age of the internet. But I have more access to it now than I did then. If I was to say who's influencing me now, because before I was kind of fucked off and in some dumb direction in my early years in tattooing, But I think about influences now, man. Now it's the man next to me. Mm. And there's a lot of men next to me.
Yeah.
So, whoever's to the right of me or whoever's to the left of me and whoever's working and I'm there to observe, man, like I've come to a point in my career, like I tapped on earlier, it's time for me to shut the fuck up. And go back to school, and that's kind of where I like to think that I'm at in my mind. Yeah. I'm around a lot of fucking well-established people in the industry for our local area here. They've got a lot more under their belt time-wise and accomplishment-wise. Their body of work is massive. And just all around for a guy, that wants to grow, you can't do that well. Having a lot to say. And I'm just doing the best that I can right now. To pay attention to everyone around me, that's who's influencing me. The guys I'm working with are great at both locations. I work at Bethesda Tattoo in Bethesda, Maryland. My boss there, man's a fucking wizard. He's been doing this stuff, longer than I've been interested. Yeah. And he's making machines, and I'm able, fortunately, to pick up information on making our tools, with this guy. I'm fortunate enough that he'll even talk to me about this stuff, what bit he does. He's a great tattooer. He's been around, like I said, longer than I've even been interested in getting tattooed. His shop is actually the age of my career, his current shop. He's been open, the same amount of time I've even been doing this. And I also work here in Baltimore, at the Baltimore Tattoo Museum. In that place, I got a lot I could say about that that's positive. Right now, it's a large shop. And it's been well established. So there's a lot of artists there. So, man, there's so many fucking heads under this one roof that the amount of information that's there is it's overwhelming. You can just within one day, kind of fry out, if you will, like your electronics will fucking frizzle if you kind of take in too much, because there's so much going on, Yeah. There's so many people doing their thing, the way I learned personally, I'll stand and observe and see how a man does things, and if you pay too much attention around there, you'll fucking short a circuit out.
It's a lot of stuff that goes on. And I think it's important. And this is one of the questions I would ask people on occasion of how important is it to be around other creatives, whether it be in your space or in a similar space.
I don't believe it to be important. I wouldn't use that word. I think it's essential. It's necessary. It's the best way I can answer that question. I don't put an importance on it. It's necessary. Like without that, I don't see what anyone can progress, and go any further.
Because I think you get something. I agree. I think you get something from it. And I think looking at it as being essential, that is important. As I think you get something from it, whether, I may go to someone who's not necessarily a podcaster or that's not in this audio space or whatever. I might just hang out with a chef and just see like how they put something together and then get hit with the Holy Ghost, not the Crimson Ghost, but the Holy Ghost of creativity. And I'm like, oh, wow, let me look at things from this perspective or what have you. And for me, it's this notion, it's cliche-ish, but it's a notion they say in sports of iron sharpen iron.
Yeah, it does. Well, for me, like when you say iron sharpens iron, for myself, before I say this, I'm probably the worst critic of myself. I'm less than a fan of anything I do. So I don't want to sound proud when I use the term you used and say iron sharpens iron, but kind of the motive when I'd said earlier, like it's time for me to just shut the fuck up, and go back to school, if you will. And it has been for years, I've been in that. That's where I need to be. But I'm kind of in a position where I'd like to be the worst guy in the room. As far as progressing my growth, I want to be the underling. I want to be the guy that I can pull information from everyone around me because they've been doing it longer, or because they're better than me, or because they're, more fluent or more experienced, or, what have you. I, by no means, do I feel that I'm going to get the most growth out of myself if I'm a big fish in a little pond. Not that I've ever felt that way. Like I said earlier, I'm not a fan of what I do at all. I'm just trying to stay alive. But
I dig it.
But you know what I mean? Like the best place for me to be is where I'm the least impressive guy in the room. Because that means everyone around me, is doing something better, or doing something, more efficiently, or doing something that I don't know about. And then in that, I get to observe and apply, You don't get to go to college to learn how to tattoo. You got to make friends, and you got to let people fucking bring you into their circle and let you observe what they're doing and, what bit of information they're willing to share with you. That's your education in this.
It's a nudging thing where if you're in a place, and I've looked at that in the same way, like I've always been in the kind of high achiever groups or what have you, and I get that imposter syndrome, and I'm like, I probably suck. I suck here. I definitely suck here. And
I find that when people, not to cut you off on that, when people praise something that I've done in my work, a lot of the time when I get the most likes on Instagram, or I get my friends like, I really liked that you did. In my head, I'm self-conscious about it. There's somewhere, or many somewheres in there, where I feel I fucked that off.
But yeah, I think it's, and I always look back at college where I came to this realization I would do that weird self-talk thing because I'm like, I don't belong here. And then I would always try to prove it to myself, but it's based on my kind of inner competition with these other people who are around me, because I'm like, you guys are doing so well. And I have to know. I think what I've learned since then, it's like, I know that other people are doing the same thing that I am, and they may look at me as that person. So we're kind of in a cyclical way, kind of driving each other to be better without actively putting it out there. Because I think that kind of competitive nature, that even though it's subtle, that kind of competitive nature, that iron sharpens iron idea, I think it's really sports oriented, but I think that's in the most alpha sense of it, of someone's telling you directly, I need you to be better today. I need you to bring it all. Yeah, with the handshake and everything, by the way.
That's, I kind of think that's a great way to get growth. And that's the kind of people I want in my life.
Absolutely.
Myself, I mean, what do you get out of complacency? If everyone around you will allow you to be complacent, then it's probably where you're going to stay. Yeah.
I always say I don't hang out with low tier people. I don't invest time in low tier people in that way. I want to be able to, like, if I were to recommend someone to you, you may feel how you feel about your work, but I'm like, no, I know Tyler is fire. Let's, this is the guy you need to hit up. And that's the way I would go with it. It's almost that stamp of approval. And I even try to do that in the nature of doing this podcast. I have a variety of people that I'll have on it. Some people who are emerging artists, some people who are seasoned artists, but I don't just have someone that's like, you're for the clout. It's like, I don't like your work. I would have someone on. I don't like their work.
I think that this new thing, the term clout, this new thing that's important to folks these days, that I'm finding this clout is kind of weird. It blows my mind. Like, what the fuck do I care about a bunch of fucking strangers' opinions of me? Why do I give it? When I hear the word clout, I'm hearing it in social media terms and things. Like, I don't really give a shit about what, the strangers, people I've never met or probably never will meet, think of me. If I want any kind of quote unquote clout, which I don't even know if that's an appropriate term to use, I think I would want the approval. That's a more reasonable term, in my opinion. I think I would want the approval of those who do what I do, and more so those who've been doing it longer than me and whom I respect and look up to their work. I don't want anyone to tell me I'm cool and powder my little ass, but for someone to give me that nod of respect, that's so much more valuable than this clout that people are after these days. Fuck out of here with the opinions of a bunch of strangers. I want my peers, if they think I'm okay, I'm doing all right.
That's the thing that matters, is that acknowledgement from your peers. People do this thing where they say, I don't care about awards and so on. And I had an interview with DDM not long ago. And,
my wife's such a big fan of DDM.
DDM mentioned the whole thing about like success is the Grammys. That's the way it's looked at. And that's literally your peers in that highest sense are saying, you're good, you've made it, we're acknowledging what you do. And
I'm with that, for a musician, I bet that sounds right. Those that do what you do are like, man, that was fucking cool.
Yeah.
That's what it's about, in my opinion. But fuck out of here with fucking Tommy Joe and fucking Buddy Sue on Instagram fucking telling me I'm cool. I don't need that shit.
I don't need the gas.
Oh man. So I'm a young man, but I'm still too old for that shit.
So this is the last question I have before I get to shameless plugs. Because, you
okay.
You always got to do shameless plugs.
I ain't got no shame neither, baby boy. We can do this.
What are a couple of things you enjoy doing when you're not tattooing folks?
I'll tell you, man, you can see me, but the folks listening to the podcast can't. It's probably comical to hear me say this if you can see me. I've got dreadlocks half down my back and spider webs tattooed across a big portion of my face. But, man, I love gardening. I absolutely love gardening, and it's a new thing for me, man. I started last summer. I was living in an apartment in Hyattsville before I moved here to Baltimore, and I went out to Home Depot and I got me a tomato plant. Yeah. And I nursed this tomato plant, and man, it was amazing. I got so much joy out of it, So now that I moved here, I have a backyard. It's not large, but I did what I can with what I got. And I got me a little garden going out back. And man, I'm all about this shit. It gives me more joy than I can imagine a hobby, that I can remember for a long time. I got tomatoes out the ass. I got all kinds of peppers, crazy stuff out there, Brussels sprouts, and it's wild. I got carrots and all that shit. But my friend was asking me, I got this buddy, Braxton, not too long ago, was asking me about my plants. And he's known me for years. So, he's kind of getting a kick out of, man, you're just getting into gardening all deep like this? That's wild. I never would have imagined you wanting to be a gardener, Yeah. But I was talking to him with it, and we were in this conversation, and I think I came up with like why I like it. Like I've been kind of a high strung dude most of my life, I had like a rough upbringing and shit. And, so now in my later, I'm 36 next month. So now in my mid 30s, I'm starting to find different pieces, different joys in life that I wouldn't have expected, in my younger life. I was telling Braxton, I was like, man, I've come to the realization, I don't think I'm out here taking care of plants. I think these fucking plants are taking care of me, man. I think they're taking care of me because it's given me this fucking structure. Never have I gotten up at fucking 8 o'clock in the morning and gotten fully dressed to go outside and fucking water a garden. And then I make sure I'm home at a certain time so I can do it again in the evening. And it's like I'm listening to fucking like I can hear one of them fucking Wu-Tang clips or something in the back of my head talking about discipline or something, one of the Shaolin monks or something, but it's just tomato plants, man. That's my hobby lately, man. I'm all about it. I've stepped out of that. I'm in my house. I got like fly traps and carnivorous plants and fucking dwarf orange trees and dwarf olive trees all in my crib and shit. Like, I don't know where it came from, but out of the blue, I just went garden crazy.
That's fantastic, actually. I mean, doing something different or what have you, and you're growing something, growing several things. And yes, that's was unexpected, but that's dope.
If you want a little peace and you want a little like zen, if you will, in your life, man, buy you a plant. And keep it alive, talk to it a little bit. Find out what kind of music it likes to listen to. It goes a long way.
I don't think my plants like the trap music because I have poisonous plants that are now dead, and I need to resort this. I need to get sort things out.
I wake up and I'll go out and water them plants and the kind of music they want to hear. When I'm in a good mood and we're out there, and I'm watering them in the morning, I'll play a little music for them. But I've found they like country music of all things. When I was a young kid, my grandmother, she'd keep a garden and she would listen to Hank Williams while she was doing her gardening. So just in my mind, and it came to mind while I was doing my gardening, and I put on some Hank Williams. Their feedback lets me know that's their preferred genre of music.
I dig it. So in this last segment, again, I want to thank you. This has been fun. This has been a treat. Good way to start off the day because we're doing this relatively early.
Yeah, I need to. I got appointments later. I've got to go tattoo in Bethesda later on. So
I dig it.
That's why I wanted to move it down so I don't have to take anything and move it on my calendar too much on my tattoo.
It's all good. Shameless plugs, website, social media, wherever, whatever, however, where can he find you? And again, thank you.
Well, thank you as well. For me, if I didn't tap on it a little earlier, I'm not really big on social media, and I don't have a website. My social media, the only one I personally use is Instagram. You can find me there at Tyler Brewer Tattooing, as in the act of tattooing. Outside of that, where to find me, man? I'm at the Baltimore Tattoo Museum Mondays and Tuesdays. You can get with me for like appointments and things. You can just give us a ring. You can go on their email and send in inquiries with photo references and descriptions. They're really responsive. We got a good guy there that takes care of all of that for us. You'll probably hear back really shortly, after inquiring. Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays, you can find me in Bethesda, Maryland, and I'm working with James Hughes, Bethesda Tattoo. The same thing with that. If you want to get an appointment with me, then you can go on their website, BethesdaTattoo.com. There you can either place your deposit and secure an appointment or inquire, or you can just give them a ring at their shop number as well. If you want to shoot me just a message on Instagram at Tyler Brewer Tattooing, then I can kind of give you a ballpark estimate, let you know kind of whether I can do what you're after or, give you some input.
Yeah.
But from there, I'm not hard to find, man.
So, yeah, good shameless plug. For the talented Tyler Brewer, I am Rob Lee, saying that there's art in and around Baltimore. You just got to look for it.